Kim Jong-un did not need to speak loudly when he welcomed Sergei Lavrov to Pyongyang. His message was already understood. In the understated greetings, the formal handshakes, and the carefully worded pledges of friendship between North Korea and the Russian Federation, a new axis of military cooperation was being cemented, one that is no longer theoretical. Since February of 2022, the Russian invasion of Ukraine has reshaped global military supply chains, forced new alliances, and revived forgotten partnerships. But among all the players quietly stepping into this war, few have been as underestimated and as strategically consequential as North Korea. South Korean intelligence has confirmed what many suspected: Pyongyang is no longer a bystander. According to multiple intelligence briefings, North Korea may have already provided as many as 12 million artillery shells to the Russian military. Some assessments from Ukrainian services go further, estimating that up to half of all artillery shells used by Russian forces in recent offensives originated in North Korean factories. This is not a symbolic gesture. It is an operational pivot, a lifeline to a Russian military that has been burning through munitions at unsustainable rates. And now, as the summer offensive intensifies, this support is evolving. No longer limited to munitions, North Korean personnel may soon be entering the battlefield themselves. Ukrainian and allied intelligence sources estimate that up to 30,000 North Korean troops could be deployed to Russia's war effort by the end of the summer. These are not mass infantry units, but specialized forces. The implication is not simply about numbers, but about combat experience, geopolitical signaling, and strategic adaptation. Kim Jong-un is not just aiding an ally, he is preparing his own army by sending it into war. This renewed axis between Pyongyang and Moscow would have been unthinkable 2 decades ago, but it did not form overnight. The collapse of the Soviet Union had initially severed the deep military cooperation between the two regimes. For years, North Korea drifted closer to China, while Russia focused westward. That changed in 2022. Under the pressure of Western sanctions, diplomatic isolation, and a grinding war in Ukraine, Russia turned to the few partners still willing to deal in raw military terms. North Korea, always eager for hard currency and international relevance, answered the call. The re-establishment of this military relationship was codified in a formal agreement. In a rare move, Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un signed a mutual support pact declaring that both nations would aid each other if faced with external aggression. While this may echo old Soviet-era treaties, its timing and intent are distinctly modern. The key driver behind this alliance is pragmatism, not ideology. For Russia, North Korea provides the kind of wartime support that few other nations can or will deliver. While Iran contributes drones and technical expertise, and China offers indirect economic assistance, it is North Korea that floods the front lines with industrial-scale artillery shells. For Pyongyang, the benefits are equally clear. In exchange for weapons and troops, North Korea receives Russian oil, wheat, and currency. But more importantly, it gains something far rarer: real battlefield experience. That is what most worries Seoul. While the average North Korean conscript spends more time farming than training, its elite units, including the 11 Storm Corps and the Reconnaissance General Bureau, are capable and disciplined. These are the units reportedly being rotated into the Russian war theater, not for manpower supplementation, as Russia still fields millions under arms, but for exposure, for evolution. This war is becoming North Korea's military laboratory. What we are witnessing is not a desperate last-minute partnership. It is a long game of force projection. North Korean troops do not share Russian doctrine. They do not train on Russian equipment, but they are now being deployed to Russian-controlled territories, operating under Russian command structures, and engaging in live-fire combat alongside Russian units. The presence of North Korean troops, whether in missile operations, engineering support, or reconnaissance, has several consequences. First, it provides Russia with additional capacity, not in terms of brute numbers, but in skilled labor and supplementary logistics. According to experts familiar with the deployments, North Korea is not merely sending cannon fodder. It is dispatching specialist missile operators, engineers, and light infantry with years of state indoctrination and paramilitary training. Second, it internationalizes the Ukraine war in ways the West has been slow to acknowledge. This is no longer a bilateral conflict. It is increasingly becoming a proxy testbed where alliances are being hardened and future wars are being rehearsed. And third, it exposes a strategic vacuum. If North Korea is acquiring advanced combat experience in modern drone warfare, urban combat, and battlefield coordination through the Ukrainian front, then its long-term capabilities, particularly against South Korea, will be transformed. Until now, North Korea's threats have largely been theoretical, rooted in posturing and nuclear brinksmanship. But real war changes military institutions, especially those that were previously untested. Western observers often ask the same question: why is North Korea risking so much for a distant war? Why insert troops into a European battlefield with no direct national interest? The answer lies not only in ideology, but in strategic calculus. First, cash. North Korea's economy remains one of the most sanctioned and isolated in the world. Its trade volume is minimal. Foreign currency reserves are scarce. But Russia has what North Korea needs: energy, wheat, and access to global shipping routes. Through informal barter or covert financial transactions, North Korea secures immediate economic benefits from its wartime exports. Second, recognition. For a regime that thrives on symbolic victories and prestige, being viewed as a strategic partner of the Russian Federation, especially in wartime, elevates Pyongyang's global profile. It reestablishes North Korea as a player in global conflict dynamics, not just an isolated hermit state. And third, training. This may be the most valuable asset of all. Western militaries spend billions to simulate battlefield conditions for their forces. North Korea, by contrast, is getting actual war exposure at scale, under live fire, against modern Western weapons, and in highly contested urban and rural environments. Its missile operators are calibrating trajectories based on real targets. Its infantry is practicing under drone threats. Its engineers are repairing live combat damage. This is not theory. It is practice, and it is being absorbed by the most elite sectors of Kim Jong-un's military. In January of this year, footage surfaced that shocked many military analysts. A captured soldier, believed to be North Korean, was being questioned by Ukrainian forces. He was not a civilian, nor was he a low-ranking foot soldier. Based on uniform insignia and the dialect used during interrogation, analysts believe he was part of the Reconnaissance General Bureau on Elite Intelligence and Operations Branch of the Korean People's Army. That revelation marked a turning point. It confirmed what many had only speculated, that North Korea's involvement was no longer behind the scenes. It had entered the operational theater directly. Subsequent reports from South Korea's National Intelligence Service estimate that at least 12,000 North Korean soldiers had already been rotated into Russian-held areas of Ukraine by the end of last year. This number could more than double by the close of this summer. These soldiers are not staying permanently. They are rotated in and out. The objective is not deployment longevity, but learning. In fact, late last year, North Korea held an internal military conference to analyze the battlefield performance of its deployed troops. That kind of after-action review suggests a broader institutional effort to extract lessons, update training protocols, and prepare for future independent engagements. This is where the strategic equation becomes most dangerous. South Korea is no longer facing a purely untested adversary to its north. It is facing a regime that is adapting, evolving, and sharpening its operational capabilities in one of the most intense modern wars of the 21st century. And that raises an even deeper question. Is Kim Jong-un preparing for a war of his own? To understand North Korea's motivations fully, one must return to the foundational strategy of the regime. Pyongyang's posture has always centered on deterrence, asymmetry, and projection. Its nuclear program is the ultimate deterrent. Its ballistic missile arsenal extends reach far beyond its borders. But what it has lacked until now is credibility in conventional combat readiness. This war in Ukraine changes that. By integrating its elite units into a real-world battlefield, North Korea is stress-testing every level of its warfighting capability. From logistics to reconnaissance to joint operations with a foreign power, it is studying Russian command structures, observing NATO-style tactics, adapting to drone swarms, and learning from mistakes without suffering the strategic penalties itself. The war in Ukraine has become a classroom. The Russian military, despite its challenges, offers a rare opportunity for the Korean People's Army to absorb lessons in real time and return home with hardened units that are no longer ceremonial but proven. The implications for the Korean Peninsula are profound. South Korean defense planners now face a future in which North Korean special forces are not only more experienced, but also trained to operate under modern combat conditions. The use of loitering munitions, counter-drone technologies, electronic warfare, all of which are being tested in the Donbas and Zaporizhia regions, may soon be integrated into North Korea's own doctrine. More than that, the psychological impact cannot be underestimated. For a closed, tightly controlled state like North Korea, the deployment of troops abroad is not simply a military maneuver. It is a political signal both to domestic audiences and to the outside world. It demonstrates confidence, it demonstrates reach, and it cultivates an image of resilience in defiance of Western pressure. But beneath the optics lies something more practical. Russia is not merely a recipient of North Korean support. It is also a supplier. Advanced missile components, surplus armored vehicles, and battlefield experience flow both ways. In some instances, Russian advisors may even be assisting in the retraining of North Korean forces based on their performance feedback from Ukraine. This is no longer a one-sided partnership. It is an ecosystem of wartime exchange, forged under sanctions, necessity, and common hostility toward the West. For Moscow, this partnership also serves a wider strategic purpose. Russia has long framed its war in Ukraine not as an isolated border dispute, but as a proxy conflict against NATO. By integrating North Korean weapons, missiles, and troops into its offensive, the Kremlin is sending a message that it too can build a counterblock, that it too has allies willing to supply not only equipment, but personnel. Even if North Korean troops represent only a fraction of the total Russian manpower, their presence adds a psychological dimension. It exposes the multi-theater nature of Russia's strategic playbook, and it complicates the West's narrative of a globally isolated Russia. In parallel, the Kremlin benefits from a propaganda perspective. North Korean ballistic missiles, such as the KN-23, and their variants recently observed in strike footage across eastern Ukraine, have allowed Russia to carry out over 700 drone and missile attacks in short order. These are not symbolic attacks. They are part of a broader effort to overwhelm Ukrainian air defenses and exhaust Western-supplied munitions. And their source, Pyongyang, adds a layer of strategic ambiguity. Western leaders now find themselves asking, is the defense of Ukraine also becoming a defense against a growing anti-Western military coalition? The answer is not yet, but the trend lines are undeniable. From Tehran to Pyongyang, authoritarian regimes with military-industrial capacity are increasingly positioning themselves as alternative suppliers to an overstretched Russian war machine. And every shell fired in Ukraine is a data point for the next war.